the IATF 16949 podcast, where we talk about all things automotive. Find us on our channel at youtube.com/IATF 16949 auditing, or visit our website at www.iatfglobaloversight.org. This is the IATF 16949 podcast.
So welcome to this SMMT and IOB podcast. Again, I'm delighted to be joined today by Devon Gage from IAOB and Niall Keeley from SMMT. So good afternoon to both of you. Obviously, we've spent the week together in the IATF Auditor Training subgroup, but I thought the theme for today's podcast could be about something called soft auditing. It's a term that I've heard around in the field of IATF for some years now, and I think it might be good to bring the listeners up to date with what is this, what does it mean, and what are IATF doing to try and improve the situation. So let's start off from very basics. Now, when we use the term soft auditing, where's that come from? Where's that term come from?
So, Paul, yeah, good to be here. So the term soft auditing is really about not, the auditor is almost being soft, isn't truly describing what is being seen during the audit. It's almost worth sort of just underlining, and we've probably said it before, but the whole basis of the IATF 16949 certification scheme is around auditors identifying issues that for whatever reason we call non-conformities. And those non-conformities have two categories, minor, major. And the soft auditing and the other term, the soft grading, is all about, are we raising issues as we see them and are we categorizing them correctly? And as I say, the whole kind of scheme is based on that happening. Without that, then the organisations can't improve, people can't move forward.
Right, and maybe Devon, we've used two terms already. We've used the soft auditing and soft grading. Are the two issues separate, or do we think they're interlinked together?
So let's go to the definitions, right? So soft auditing would be, as an auditor, you find some type of what we consider non-conformance, and you do not write that. You don't put it in the audit report. There's no evidence of it documented anywhere. Now, soft grading, on the other hand, is the wrong classification of a non-conformance. So there's a major disruption in a client's process, but it's only noted as a minor. That would be the instance of soft grading.
Right, okay, now that's a very clear explanation of the difference. And now, how did IATF become aware then of this problem?
This jumped out, Paul, I'm going to use that term, from the witness audit. So IATF, one of the, I would say, core monitoring activities the IATF have is the witness audit. So the IATF would send a witness auditor to observe an audit in the field. And what became obvious was the non-conformity profile from those witness audits. The certification body auditor is raising considerably more non-conformities. And of those non-conformities, a higher percentage of them are majors. So there was a big difference in the non-conformity profile when we look at witness versus non-witness audits, and that identified the problem, I would say.
Right, okay, so I'm clear how we know there's a problem. So Devon, what are IATF or any of the work groups then trying to do to address this problem with the certification bodies?
Yeah, so we do within the IATF have a witness auditor subgroup who's been tasked with kind of leading the charge on bringing these extremes closer together of the witness versus non-witness NCs. It started with a simple survey out to auditors. What are some reasons that you believe there may be soft auditing? What are some reasons you believe there may be soft grading? How is it impacted in different regions? And based on that feedback, they've come up with a couple different documents to try and help educate more about this issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess now, and I've been an auditor, if we're realistic, people are going to be tougher when they're witnessed, when they're not witnessed. So there may always be a gap. Yeah. What were some of the reasons that were fed back from the auditors about the size of this gap and maybe why they're not writing the non-conformities they should be writing, or they're not grading the non-conformities? What types of things were auditors saying was driving them for the different behaviour?
Yeah, and again, as Devin said, the IATF developed a kind of a sort of workshop almost for certification bodies for auditors to try and get their feedback. And we are aware that there are things that many of the stakeholders can do, including the IATF, around the sort of rules, requirements and language. So again, the terminology of sort of major non-conformity and the impact that has on an organisation's certificate, the fact that then requires additional time to be spent on follow-up audit and NC management activity, it feels that that might be one of the factors that could influence things. And we've attempted as part of Rule 6 to consider as many of those recommendations that we got as possible within the sort of boundaries of what's feasible.
Yeah. And obviously, Devon, we have a global scheme. Do you think there's any cultural aspects that might influence this?
Oh, absolutely. Within all different regions over the world, it's just there are different ways of dealing with conflict and conflict resolution, and that can sometimes drive behaviors within auditors.
Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting. There's again the inherent risk that comes from having a contractual relationship between the certification body and the client that is being certified, which again we're all acutely aware of, but particularly for the third party auditing, it is very much an independent activity that should not be influenced by any, let's say, contractual arrangements.
Yeah, and I think now you alluded earlier to the non-conformity term tends to conjure up negativity, which may turn people off in actually saying it's an opportunity to improve your business, rather than, oh, I've got to clear this within a certain number of days, otherwise I lose my certificate.
And like right at the beginning, the whole basis is that organisations improve by the auditor identifying the issues that exist and the organisation addressing those issues. But when all of those are tied up in sort of negative language, it does make it a little bit harder around, you know, major non-conformity and suspension, and it makes it less of a sort of positive activity.
Yeah. Do we think, Devon, this issue is unique to the automotive industry and supply chain, or do you think it's tied up with the certification process in general?
No, I believe this is something that is driven through all the different certification processes within, you lean back to ISO and all the different organization or type of industries that are involved there as well.
Yeah. And now, do you think it is unique to third-party auditing? Obviously, in IATF, we have internal audits and we have second-party audits. Yeah. Is there any evidence that maybe internal auditors are not tough enough, or second-party auditors are not tough enough?
Almost certainly. And again, there's such an important distinction between the third-party and the, let's say, the internal and second-party audits, where the impartiality and the distance that the certification body brings takes out any confusion about, well, am I supposed to be helping, or what's my role in this? Whereas I think with internal auditors, it's a much more helpful activity. So they would be expected to be more proactive in finding opportunities for improvement and development opportunities for the management system. But of course, with any type of auditing, there's always a risk that you're not fully getting into the level of detail that you need to. You're not describing the problem in the way it should be described. Again, internal audits will be categorising their findings in different ways, which again might not help in terms of fixing things. So I think it is a problem across all audit types.
Yeah. And Devon, is there any evidence that things are starting to get better and this gap's getting smaller?
Yeah, so that's something the IATF is monitoring monthly. We look at those statistics, and we can see that we're making progress towards closing that gap. Are we making as much progress as we'd like? No, it's still one of our priorities within the scheme itself, but we are seeing trends that are positive.
Yeah, which is really positive to hear then. And as you say, there's a long way to go to close that gap, albeit we're never going to get identical behaviour from an auditor that's witnessed versus not witnessed. So maybe we can follow up on this in a future podcast and see whether there is continuation of those improving trends. But no, it's been good to discuss it today. And look forward to the next podcast.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Devon. Thank you, Niall.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Niall.
Yeah. Speak soon.
The IATF 16949 podcast, where we talk about all things automotive. Find us on our channel at youtube.com/IATF 16949 auditing, or visit our website at www.iatfglobaloversight.org. This is the IATF 16949 podcast.